Welcome back to Your World at 10. As I told you, busy weekend for Europe as Greece will hold its parliamentary elections and France will vote for the second and final round of presidential elections. Now, the battle between François Hollande and the incumbent president Nicolas Sarkozy is nail-bitingly close, with Hollande taking a slight lead in the pre-poll survey. So let's focus on France today. I have with me James Goundry, country analyst at IHS Global Insight. James, thank you very much for your time today. Let me start by asking you that François Hollande has given a very, very tough fight to President Sarkozy. He seems to be ahead right now. How do you think this will turn out on Sunday?
Well, I think it looks as if it's going to be a victory for Hollande. You know, people are banding the word miracle around now if Sarkozy's going to win, and I think that's pretty accurate. All the indications suggest it's going to be a relatively easy win for Hollande on Sunday.
All right, if it's going to be a relatively easy win, then the next question to you is how will or what do you expect will be the changes to France's economic policy if François Hollande was in fact to come to power?
Well, I think it's important to bear in mind that Hollande has promised to balance the budget by 2017, which is only 1 year later than Sarkozy was saying he would do it. So I think what we're going to see is changes in the way he aims to achieve this, rather than any grand change in his overall approach to economic policy. And I think, we're likely to see a shift towards greater tax burden on the wealthy. We're likely to see a greater burden on big business, and also alleviating some of the taxes on the poorer in society. I think with regard to Europe, what we're likely to see is him pushing for a stronger emphasis on growth at the EU level. And he's made it very clear that's what he's going to be pushing for.
All right. There are 2 or 3 issues, James, that I would like your views on with regards to what Hollande's position is likely to be and what impact it's going to have. And first, let's start with the sweep of austerity that's driving across Europe. And I'm keen to know what François Hollande's position is on that austerity. Is he going to be in favor of it or not? Because France has been one of the key countries, along with Germany, that's pushed for that austerity in the periphery.
Well, I think that Hollande will be, certainly, I think it's fair to say Hollande is going to be in favour of continuing austerity. Yes, balancing the budget is a priority for François Hollande. I think what he's going to try and change is the way they do that and the emphasis they place on growth. For François Hollande, it's not just about austerity, it's about getting growth to return to the Eurozone. It's about having measures to create more growth, which will in turn help get rid of the budget deficit. So that's what he's going to insist on at the European level, and what he's also going to take steps to achieve at the national level as well.
Well, how is that growth going to come about, James? Because we've seen some of the data coming out of Europe, and it's not just the periphery. The core is getting impacted as well. The data both on Germany and France seems to be getting weaker. So what impact do you think Hollande's policies will have on the growth prospects of France itself?
As I have to say, I'm not an economist, so I'm not best placed to answer that question. But according to his own estimates, he'll manage to improve the prospects of the country very well, of course. But then most of the consensus that I read seems to be that his estimates are over-ambitious.
Over-ambitious. All right. So we've got the issue of austerity, internal growth, and the most important issue, the relationship between France and Germany, which has been the driving force of the attempts towards recovery in Europe. If Hollande were to come to power, how is it going to impact the France-Germany equation?
Yes, I think it has to. There's been a lot of speculation in the press that Hollande and Merkel might come to clash over Eurozone issues, but I think that France and Germany is going to continue to be the central force in the Eurozone and in the European Union, and it's essential that they get on. And at base, I think that Hollande is a pragmatic, pro-European politician, and he's going to want to cooperate with Germany and the others in the Eurozone and beyond to make sure that the Eurozone survives and that the European Union gets out of the crisis it's in at the moment. And I think Merkel is ultimately extremely pragmatic, and I think they'll both be very keen to work together. Yes, there might be initial disagreements. Yes, there will almost certainly be negotiations that might become heated and somewhat difficult. But finally, I'm fairly certain that they will come to an agreement.
All right, you're hopeful about that. Let me take that one question forward and ask you, is Hollande likely to back the fiscal treaty that the EU nations are expected to agree upon over the course of this year at least? Because he seems to have suggested growth clauses that need to be included in that treaty, or else he won't back it.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think he's actually promised to renegotiate the fiscal treaty. I think that that's probably unlikely, not least because of the political capital that was expended by many European leaders to negotiate the treaty in the first place. Also, you know, it's been signed, all right, it hasn't been ratified by everyone, but it has been ratified by a couple of countries. So it's going to be quite difficult to wade in and try and renegotiate the fiscal compact. I think what's more likely is some kind of European agreement on a growth compact, including growth measures at the European level, but not as part of the fiscal compact, as a separate agreement, a separate document trying to boost growth at the European level. I think a compromise like that is much more likely.
Oh, that's not the only point he's going to disagree with Germany on, right? He also advocates a stronger role for the ECB when it comes to rescuing peripheral countries. That's something that Germany doesn't agree with either.
Yeah, indeed. You know, I think Hollande's made it quite clear that he would like to see the ECB act as a lender of last resort for the Eurozone. You know, he just yesterday in the debate with Sarkozy spoke of how odd it is that the ECB will lend to European banks at very low interest rates, and yet the European Union will lend to troubled economies at much higher interest rates than the ECB will lend to banks. Yes, I think he would like to see that the ECB act as a lender of last resort, but as you point out, you know, Merkel and the Germans are not going to let that happen. It's against the rules of the ECB, and I don't think they're likely to move on that. And just because the Germans will be so intransigent on this issue, I think that Hollande is likely to ultimately concede, and I think there'll be a compromise and there'll be ultimately cooperation.
All right, so he's got two big challenges facing him. One, maintaining that relationship with Germany on an even keel, and second, being able to trigger off some degree of growth in France, or at least restore the growth agenda. Is he going to have enough political strength to be able to push that through?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends to some extent what happens in the legislative elections, which will take place next month. If he has a strong majority in the Parliament, then I think it's possible, you know, he'll push through his agenda. But let's bear in mind, yes, he's talked a lot about spending commitments and measures for growth in his campaign, but he's also laid heavy on balancing the budget deficit, getting rid of the budget deficit rather, by 2017. So clearly he's going to have to announce some spending cuts, and he's going to have to flesh out the bones of his plan to balance the budget.
All right, one final question, James, and I know you said it would be nothing short of a miracle if President Sarkozy was managed to retain that seat, but I do want to put in a question. If he does in fact win on Monday, I don't want to rule that possibility out altogether. Will it be a very different Sarkozy in power? Because in a sense he's come so close to losing. So do you expect big changes in his political as well as economic policies?
Look, I think if he wins, and it's a huge if, I think he would see it as validation of his ideas that he's been pushing all along, and I think he would see it as a mandate to continue with the promises that he's made in the run-up to this election. So no, I don't think we would see suddenly a radically different President Sarkozy should he win a second term.
All right, James Goundry, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time. That's James Goundry, country analyst at IHS, taking us through what he expects will be François Hollande's policies. If Mr. Hollande was to come to power, we'll know only at the end of Sunday. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of Your World at 10. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. Coming up next is The Firm.